PSY224. Welcome to study session 4. Patterns of deviant behavior. Introduction. The aim of this study session is to introduce you to certain patterns of deviant behavior, their symptoms, as well as classification. The study session will also help you to differentiate between simple deviance and maladaptive behavior deviance from maladaptive behavior. When you have studied this session, you should be able to differentiate between maladaptive behavior and deviant behavior. Simple deviance and maladaptation. It is important to differentiate maladaptive behavior from behavior which is simply deviant. A maladaptive behavior is usually seen as creating a problem of some sort, as defined by the individual, the people around them, or by society at large. Whereas a deviant behavior is simply a behavior which is unusual by some standard or another. Deviance from the norm does not of itself produce maladaptation. We can define deviant behavior as behavior which falls outside of some normal range. This normal range could be defined either socially by reference to what is seen to be acceptable behavior by people around the individual, or statistically by reference to statistics on how most people behave. You will find that the distinction between maladaptive behavior and deviant behavior is reflected in all of the DSM diagnostic criteria. For example, the diagnostic criteria for transvestic fetishism are: A. Over a period of at least 6 months, in a heterosexual male, recurrent, intense, sexually arousing fantasies, sexual urges, or behaviors involving cross-dressing. Criterion A above describes the deviant behaviors. What it is that makes the behavior unusual by some standard or another. Of course, deviancy itself is not enough. To come to the attention of a psychologist, the behavior must also result in maladaptation. This is reflected in the second criterion. B. The fantasies, sexual urges, or behaviors cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, and other important areas of functioning. So, what if people behave strangely as long as they are not putting themselves at some physical or psychological risk or causing others harm? Then, we don't really need to worry about them. But some common deviant behaviors usually meet the criteria of constituting physical or psychological risks to themselves or causing harm to others. Nevertheless, some psychological dysfunctions could possess direct relationship to criminal motivation and behavior. The issue of mens rea and actus reus comes up here again. When an individual possesses criminal motivation, we are saying that we could establish a criminal responsibility. Nevertheless, the underlying factor for the crime might simply be a psychological dysfunction. For example, certain personality disorders might make people to engage themselves in criminal behavior. Humans are social by nature, and they must interact with other people in order to survive. If they cannot interact in a socially accepted way, they will experience problems. In other words, people's behavior must be flexible and we need to adapt it in order to fit in with the particular situation or culture in which we find ourselves. The question here then is whether an offender may be considered as mad or bad. That is, are they suffering from a disorder or just carrying out willful, deviant behaviors? More questions. What are the implications of such labeling? This will also determine whether the approach to handling them will be punishment or treatment. We shall now examine these various deviant behavior patterns and their relationship to criminal behavior and motivation. Study session summary. In this study session, we have examined different patterns of deviant behavior. Specifically, we made a distinction between maladaptive behavior and a simple deviant behavior. End of study session 4. Thanks for listening.